Imagine this. You wake up one morning and everything you were worried about, the money stress, the self-doubt, the anxiety about the future, is completely gone. Not because your life suddenly became perfect, not because you won the lottery or got the promotion or found the perfect relationship, but because something shifted inside you. Something so deep, so fundamental, that the chaos around you simply stopped having power over you. You look at the same problems, and instead of feeling crushed by them, you feel calm, clear, capable, like you finally know exactly who you are, what you want, and how to get there. Now here is the question that I want you to sit with for just a moment. What if that shift, that inner revolution, was not years away? What if it was one idea away? Because 2,000 years ago, a man who was born into slavery, who owned nothing, had no rights, no freedom, no future by anyone's definition, became the most sought-after philosopher in the most powerful empire on earth. His name was Epictetus, and the ideas he left behind have quietly shaped the minds of Roman emperors, prisoner of war survivors, billionaire investors, world champion athletes, and some of the most successful human beings who have ever walked this planet. These ideas have a name, and that name is Stoicism. And in the next hour or so, I'm going to walk you through exactly what it is, why it works, and how you can use it, starting today, to relax your mind completely and begin manifesting the success and wealth you have always known somewhere deep inside you that you are capable of. So get comfortable, take one slow breath in, and let's begin. My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you chose to be here. Maybe you're driving somewhere. Maybe you are lying in bed at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. Maybe you are on a walk, or doing dishes, or sitting in a quiet room trying to figure out why. Even though you're working hard, even though you're doing everything you were told to do, something still feels off. Like you're running on a treadmill that keeps going faster but never actually takes you anywhere. Like success is a horizon that moves further away every time you get closer to it. Like there's a version of your life, calmer, fuller, more meaningful, that exists just on the other side of something you cannot quite name. If any part of that sounds familiar, you're not broken. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply operating with an incomplete set of tools. And that is exactly what this audiobook is going to fix. Here is what nobody told you. The world taught you to chase. Chase the money. Chase the title. Chase the lifestyle. Chase the validation. And so you ran. You ran fast. You ran hard. You worked late and woke up early and said yes when you wanted to say no and pushed through when your body and mind were begging you to stop. And maybe you even got some of it. Maybe you hit some of those targets. And then something strange happened. You arrived and it did not feel the way you thought it would. Because the problem was never the destination. The problem was the mind you brought with you on the journey. An anxious mind chasing success does not become a calm mind when it arrives at success. It just finds new things to be anxious about. An empty mind chasing wealth does not become a full mind when it has money. It just finds new ways to feel empty. The Stoics understood this more than 2,000 years ago, and they built an entire philosophy, not of retreat, not of giving up, not of settling for less, but of becoming so internally powerful, so deeply rooted in who you are and what you value, that the external world simply cannot shake you. And from that place of radical inner stability, they built empires, wrote timeless wisdom, led armies, created wealth, and left behind a legacy that the entire modern world is still drawing from. That is what we're going to learn together. So let us go. Let me ask you something that I want you to answer honestly, even just to yourself. When was the last time your mind was truly quiet? Not distracted by a screen, not rehearsing a conversation that already happened or one that hasn't happened yet. Not running through your to-do list or your worries or your plans. Just genuinely, completely still. If you are struggling to remember the last time that happened, you are in very good company. We live in a world that is genuinely allergic to stillness. We fill every silence with a podcast, every gap with a scroll, every moment of rest with guilt about not being productive enough. Stillness feels like laziness. Quiet feels like falling behind. And so we keep the noise going. All day, every day, until the noise becomes so familiar that we forget there was ever anything else. But here is the thing, and this is something that the Stoics understood in the ancient world, and that modern neuroscience is now confirming with hard data: a calm mind is not a lazy mind. A calm mind is the most powerful instrument a human being possesses. Think about your mind like a glass of water. When you're anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, that water is turbulent, shaking, muddy. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot think clearly. You react instead of respond. You make decisions from fear instead of wisdom. You miss opportunities that are right in front of you because your vision is blurred by noise. But when your mind settles, when the water becomes still, suddenly everything becomes visible. You can see the bottom. You can see patterns and possibilities and solutions that were completely invisible before. And that clarity, that calm, settled, focused state of mind, is the actual starting point of every great success story ever told. The Stoics called the center of this inner power the hegemonikon. It simply means the ruling faculty, the part of you that decides, in every situation, no matter what is happening around you, how you will respond. And here's the most important, most empowering thing I will say in this entire audiobook, so I want you to really let it land. You cannot always control what happens to you. Life will throw things at you that you did not choose and did not deserve. That is simply the reality of being human. But you can always, without exception, in every single situation, control how you respond. That gap between what happens and how you respond, that tiny sacred space, is where your entire life is actually being built. Every single day. Now here is where this connects directly to the success and wealth you are looking for. When you operate from a calm, clear, intentional state of mind, something remarkable starts to happen. You start making better decisions. Not occasionally, consistently. You start seeing opportunities that anxious people walk right past. You start showing up differently in every room you enter, in conversations, in negotiations, in your work, in your relationships. You become someone that other people trust, want to work with, want to follow, want to invest in. You become, in the truest sense of the word, magnetic. Not because of some mystical law of attraction, but because calm, focused, purposeful people are genuinely, extraordinarily rare in this noisy world. And the world is drawn to them like a compass to north. Here is your first practice, and it is almost insultingly simple. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before you look at a single message, a single notification, a single news headline, sit still for 5 minutes. Just 5. And instead of trying to force your mind to be empty, simply watch it. Observe your thoughts the way you would watch clouds moving across the sky. You do not grab them. You do not fight them. You do not chase them. You simply notice them and let them pass. This is what the Stoics called the observer practice. And it is the foundation of everything else in this audiobook. Because the most important truth in Stoic philosophy and in modern psychology is this: you cannot change what you cannot first see. Awareness always comes before transformation. And 5 quiet minutes in the morning is where awareness begins. Now, I want to share with you what I believe is the single most powerful idea in the entire Stoic tradition. The one idea that if you truly internalize it, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it in your bones, will immediately reduce your anxiety, sharpen your focus like a laser, and completely change the way you approach both success and money. And the idea is so simple, it almost sounds too simple. Here it is. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. And the most important work you will ever do in your entire life is learning, clearly, honestly, without self-deception, which Epictetus, born a slave, began his most famous work with exactly these words: some things are in our control, and others are not. That is the whole foundation. Everything else in Stoic philosophy flows from this single observation. Now I know that sounds simple, and it is, but do not confuse simple with easy. Because if you look honestly at how you actually spend your time and energy every single day, you will discover something uncomfortable. Most of us, most of the time, are pouring the majority of our mental and emotional resources into things that are completely fundamentally outside our control. Think about your last week. How many hours did you spend worrying about what someone else thought of you? How much mental energy did you burn on anxiety about the economy, about markets, about global events, about things that might happen, might go wrong, might not work out? How much of your day was consumed by replaying conversations that already happened, trying to rewrite outcomes that are already fixed, predicting futures that are genuinely unpredictable? All of that, every single bit of it, is energy spent outside your circle of control. And here is the brutal, important truth that energy is not just wasted. It is stolen. It is stolen from the things that are genuinely, powerfully within your influence. Your habits, your effort, your attitude, your choices, your focus, your skill development, your relationships, your response to whatever the world throws at you. Here is how this changes everything when it comes to wealth. Most financial anxiety, most money stress, is focused on entirely the wrong things. We worry about inflation, which we cannot control. We worry about whether we picked the right stock, which we cannot fully control. We worry about recessions, about market crashes, about economic uncertainty. All external, all outside the circle. But what is inside the circle? How consistently you save. How deliberately you invest in your skills. What value you create for other people. How disciplined your daily financial habits are. What relationships you build and nurture. These are the levers that actually determine your financial trajectory over time. And yet we spend 20 times more energy on the outer circle than the inner one. Because the outer circle is dramatic and loud and visible, and the inner circle requires something much harder, quiet, daily discipline. There was a trader, not famous, no book deals, no TV appearances, who shared his story in a small interview once. For his first decade in finance, he was a complete emotional wreck. Not because he lacked skill, but because he measured his self-worth entirely by market performance. A good day in the market, and he felt like a genius. A bad day, and he could not sleep, could not eat, could not be present for his family. His inner state was completely at the mercy of something entirely outside his control. Then someone gave him a copy of Epictetus, and he made one decision. He stopped measuring his success by outcomes he could not control and started measuring it by the quality of his process, his research, his discipline, his decision-making framework, things entirely within his power. The market stayed unpredictable. His inner state became unshakable. And over time, because calm, disciplined decisions compound, just like money does, his results improve dramatically. Tonight, try this. Take a piece of paper. Draw two circles, a small one inside a larger one. In the inner circle, write everything from today that was genuinely within your power. In the outer ring, write everything that was not. Look at where most of your energy went, and then make one quiet, honest promise to yourself. Tomorrow, I give everything to the inner circle, and I release the outer one, not with defeat, but with grace. I know what you might be thinking right now. We have talked about calming the mind, about focusing on what you can't control, and now I'm going to tell you to think about negative things. I know, it sounds backwards, but stay with me, because this next idea, which almost nobody talks about, might be the most immediately life-changing practice in this entire audiobook. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. And before you close this and go find something more cheerful, let me show you why it produces the exact opposite of what you might expect. Here is the practice. For just a moment, I want you to imagine that something you deeply value is gone. Not damaged. Gone. Your health, your closest relationship, your job, your savings, your ability to do the thing you love most. Just imagine it, really imagine it, for 30 seconds. Feel the absence of it. Let it land. And now come back. Look around you. Notice how differently the room feels. Notice how your coffee, if you have one, probably seems a little more worth appreciating. Notice how the person in the next room, or the memory of someone you love, carries a little more weight. Notice how the ordinary suddenly feels, in this moment, a little extraordinary. That is premeditatio malorum working. That is negative visualization doing its job. The Stoics were not pessimists. They were not trying to make themselves miserable. They were doing something profoundly, almost counterintuitively intelligent. They were using the imagination of loss to inoculate themselves against the fear of loss. They were using the mind's ability to simulate absence as a way to deepen presence. Because here's a trap that almost all of us fall into, and psychologists have a name for it: the hedonic treadmill. We want something deeply. We work for it. We get it. And within days or weeks, we have adapted to it. The excitement fades. The gratitude evaporates. And the wanting begins again for the next thing, the bigger thing, the better thing. We run and never arrive anywhere more satisfied. Negative visualization breaks the treadmill. It interrupts adaptation. It forces you, gently, briefly, powerfully, to feel the value of what you already have. And that practice, done consistently, produces a quality of daily gratitude that no amount of positive affirmation ever quite reaches. And here's the wealth dimension of this idea that Seneca, one of Rome's most wealthy men, actually lived. Once a month, Seneca would voluntarily simplify everything. Simple food, simple surroundings, no luxuries, no comforts, none of the things his wealth could provide. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to feel in his body and in his mind that he could survive and even be content without his wealth. That the money was something he had, not something he was. And this practice, he wrote in his letters, made him braver, more willing to take the calculated risks that built and protected his wealth, because he had already visited the worst-case scenario in his imagination and discovered it was survivable. It was not the catastrophe he feared, and that discovery, that visceral, felt knowledge that you can handle less, frees you to pursue more without the kind of desperate, fear-driven attachment that leads to terrible financial decisions. Your practice this week is simple but deep. Every evening before sleep, spend 2 minutes imagining the loss of one thing you're taking for granted right now. Your eyesight, your mobility, a specific person in your life, your income. And then write down 3 genuine reasons you are grateful for that thing, right now, exactly as it is. Do this for 7 days. By day 7, I promise you, something in your relationship to your own life will have quietly, permanently shifted. What if everything that has ever gone wrong in your life, every rejection, every failure, every door that slammed in your face, every plan that fell apart, every version of you that did not work out, what if none of it was happening to you? What if all of it, without exception, was happening for you? Not to punish you, not because you deserved it, but because the life you're meant to live requires a version of you that could only be built through exactly those experiences. The Stoics had a concept for this. 2 Latin words that carry more wisdom than entire libraries of self-help content. Amor fati, love of fate. And I want to be very clear about what this means because it is often misunderstood, and the misunderstanding strips it of its power. Amor fati does not mean pretending that painful things are not painful. It does not mean smiling through loss and calling it a blessing and bypassing your real emotions with a spiritual platitude. It means something far more courageous than that. It means choosing consciously, deliberately, even when it is hard, to see everything that happens, including the painful things, as necessary and useful material for the life you are building. It means treating your own story, all of it, including the chapters you wish you could delete, not as evidence that things went wrong, but as the exact raw material from which something extraordinary is being made. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in Meditations that has stayed with me since the first time I read it. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Sit with that for a moment. The obstacle is not blocking the path. The obstacle is the path. Every rejection is teaching you resilience. Every failure is showing you what does not work, which means you're one experiment closer to what does. Every person who doubted you was, without knowing it, adding fuel to a fire that is going to outlast every single one of their doubts. The difficulty is not separate from the journey. It is the journey. Think about the people you most admire, not the highlight reel, the full story. Steve Jobs was fired from the company he built with his own hands. Oprah Winfrey was told by a television producer that she was unfit for TV. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before one said yes. And she was a single mother on welfare, writing in a cafe because her flat was too cold and too dark. Every one of these stories follows the same pattern. The failure is not a footnote. The failure is the foundation. The loss is not an interruption to the success story. The loss is chapter 1. Start the More Fatty journal. Every day, write down one thing that went wrong. One frustration, one setback, one disappointment. And then underneath it, write 3 ways that experience could be working for you. Not as definitely working, could be give it the benefit of the doubt. Over time, and this has been shown in psychological research, not just ancient philosophy, this practice rewires the way your brain automatically processes adversity. It shifts your default response from fear and contraction to curiosity and expansion. And curiosity, in every domain of life, is the engine of everything great. Let's talk about money. Directly, honestly, without the guilt and without the fantasy. Because the Stoics were not vague about wealth. They were not spiritual bypassers who told you to trust the universe and stop wanting things. They were some of the most financially sophisticated thinkers of the ancient world, and they had very specific, very practical views on how to create wealth, how to hold it, and how to make sure it works for you rather than the other way around. And let us start by clearing up the single biggest misconception about Stoicism and money. Stoicism is not about poverty. It is not about giving everything away, living like a monk, and calling that wisdom. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers who ever lived, was obscenely wealthy. He owned multiple homes and estates. Marcus Aurelius was the richest and most powerful man in the world. Cato was one of Rome's most respected financial minds. These people understood money. They built wealth deliberately. They used it purposefully. They enjoyed it without apology. They just were not owned by it. And that distinction between having wealth and being enslaved to wealth is the entire point. The Stoics believed that money is what they called a preferred indifferent, which means it is better to have it than not to have it. It creates options, reduces unnecessary suffering, and enables you to do more good in the world. But it is not the source of happiness, virtue, or meaning. You could be rich and utterly miserable. Most of us have seen this up close. And you could be financially modest and deeply, genuinely fulfilled. The money itself is morally neutral. What matters is the relationship you have with it. Now here is the Stoic blueprint for wealth, and it is built on the 4 core Stoic virtues. First, wisdom. Make informed, thoughtful, patient financial decisions. Study before you invest. Understand what you own. Do not chase what is popular. Do not make emotional decisions with rational money. The Stoics believed that knowledge was not optional. It was a moral responsibility. Second, courage. Take calculated risks. The person who is so afraid of losing that they never invest, never start, never bet on themselves, will always stay exactly where they are. Comfort is the enemy of growth in life and in finances. The Stoics were not reckless, but they were brave. Third, justice. Build wealth through fair means. Create genuine value for real people. The Stoics believed, with complete conviction, that sustainable success must be ethical, not because dishonesty always gets punished, but because integrity is the foundation of the kind of life worth living. And fourth, temperance. Live below your means, not as punishment, but as power. Every dollar or rupee you do not spend unnecessarily is a unit of future freedom. The Stoics did not deprive themselves of joy. They simply refused to trade long-term freedom for short-term comfort. The lesson of every Stoic who ever built wealth is the same. Money amplified, without character, leads eventually to destruction. But money combined with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, that combination leads to a life of extraordinary impact, genuine freedom, and deep satisfaction. So stop apologizing for wanting to build wealth. The Stoics never did. Just decide to build it the right way. I want to tell you about a man named James Stockdale. He was a United States Navy pilot, shot down over Vietnam in 1965, captured and held as a prisoner of war for 7.5 years. He was tortured repeatedly. He was placed in isolation. He lived under conditions that most of us cannot even imagine. He had no certainty of survival, no communication with his family for years, no knowledge of whether he would ever be free. And he survived, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually intact. He walked out of that experience with more wisdom, more clarity, and more inner strength than he went in with. When asked what kept him going, he gave an answer that has stayed with me ever since. He said that he never lost faith in the outcome, but he also never confused faith in the outcome with a willingness to confront the most brutal facts of his current reality. He was present, completely, fully, unwaveringly present, not lost in regret about what had happened, not paralyzed by terror about an uncertain future, present with everything that was actually in front of him and responding to it with everything he had. And that is exactly what the Stoics meant when they talked about the present moment. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea again and again throughout meditations. He wrote that the present moment is the only real thing we ever have. The past is gone, completely, permanently, unretrievably gone. You cannot change it, touch it, or retrieve a single second of it. The future does not yet exist. It lives only as thought, only as projection, only as the stories your anxious or hopeful mind tells itself. The only moment in which you're actually genuinely, physically alive, the only moment in which anything can actually be created or changed or built, is this one, right here, right now. Think about how much of your productive capacity is consumed by mental time travel. How many hours of potential focus, creativity, and momentum are lost every single day to guilt about the past and anxiety about the future, neither of which is happening right now, in the only moment that is real. And in a world where every app, every platform, every notification is engineered by teams of brilliant people specifically to pull you out of the present and into a scroll, the person who can genuinely stay present, who can give their full, undivided, phone-off attention to the work in front of them, has a competitive advantage so profound that it almost feels unfair. 1 hour of complete, present-moment attention on the right problem is worth more than 10 hours of distracted, anxious, half-present effort. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. This is economics. This is the truth that every great performer in every field already knows. Try this tomorrow. Pick one task, just one, and give it 30 minutes of your complete, undivided, fully present attention. No tabs, no phone, no multitasking, just you and the work. And notice what happens, not just to your output, but to how you feel when you are done. That quiet satisfaction is what the Stoics called living in alignment with your nature. And once you feel it, you will want it every day. Marcus Aurelius woke up every morning as Emperor of Rome, with the weight of millions of lives on his shoulders, with wars to manage and crises to navigate and human beings to lead. And before he did a single imperial thing, he sat with himself. He reflected. He reminded himself of who he wanted to be that day. He prepared his mind before the world could shape it for him. We know this because his private journal survived, the one he never intended to publish, the one he wrote purely for himself, as a daily practice of self-examination and recommitment. We call it meditations. In reading, it is one of the most extraordinary experiences available to any human being, because you realize immediately that this most powerful man in the world was not a finished, perfect sage. He was struggling every day to be patient, to be kind, to stay focused, to not be petty or reactive or self-indulgent. He was a work in progress, just like you and I are, and he wrote it down every morning because he knew that the day would test him, and he wanted to face those tests from a place of intention rather than accident. Here is the morning ritual that can change your life. The moment you wake up, before your phone, before your messages, before you let the world in, take 5 minutes. Sit up, take 3 slow breaths, and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what am I genuinely grateful for right now? Not a list, not a performance. One real thing that you're actually glad exists in your life. Second, who do I want to be today? Not what do I want to accomplish. Who do I want to be? Patient, focused, generous, brave, calm, name it. Because the day will test your character, and if you have not decided who you are before the tests begin, you will fail them by default. And third, what is likely to be difficult today, and how do I want to respond to it? As the person I just chose to be, that third question is the Stoic secret weapon. It is called the morning premeditation. You mentally rehearse difficulty before it arrives. You imagine the frustrating email, the difficult conversation, the unexpected setback, and you rehearse in your mind your calm, thoughtful, intentional response. You're not being pessimistic. You're being prepared. And the mind that has rehearsed the storm is far less rattled when the storm actually arrives. At night, close the loop with 3 more reflections. What did I do today that reflected the person I want to be? Where did I fall short, and what does that teach me? What will I do differently tomorrow? No guilt, no harsh self-judgment, just honest, kind, useful reflection. The Stoics believed in accountability without cruelty. You hold yourself to a high standard, and you treat your own failures with the same compassionate directness you would offer a good friend. This morning and evening practice, 10 minutes total, will do more for your clarity, your resilience, and your sense of purpose than almost anything else in this audiobook. And now we come to the chapter that most self-help books would skip, the one that sounds uncomfortable, the one that, I promise you, will stay with you longest of all. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. The Stoics did not avoid this reality. They meditated on it, daily, with intention, and not because they were morbid or dark or pessimistic, but because they understood something that most of us spend our entire lives running from. The awareness of death is the most clarifying, most liberating force available to a human mind. When you truly, viscerally internalize that your time here is finite, that there's a specific number of mornings left for you, and it is not an infinite number, something shifts. The superficial becomes obviously superficial. The petty becomes visibly petty. The fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of looking foolish or being wrong or being imperfect, all of it shrinks. Because against the backdrop of your own mortality, most of the things we are afraid of turn out to be completely, almost laughably insignificant. Who cares what they think of you? Who cares if you fail? Who cares if you look silly trying something new? You have a finite number of days. Are you really going to spend them not trying because someone might judge you for it? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not being dark. He was being ferociously alive. He was saying, act like this moment matters because it does. Act like the people around you matter because they do. Stop wasting this extraordinarily rare, unbelievably brief window of conscious human existence on things that do not actually matter to you. Steve Jobs, in his now famous 2005 Stanford commencement address, said something that is, without him naming it, pure Stoic philosophy. He said, "Remembering that I will be dead soon is the most important tool I have ever used to make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." He was practicing memento mori every single day, and it is what gave him the courage to think differently, to risk everything, to refuse to settle for someone else's definition of a good life. Here is your practice. Imagine yourself at 90 years old. You are at the very end, looking back at the whole arc of your life, everything you chose, everything you avoided, everything you built, and everything you held back from. From that vantage point, what do you wish you had done more of? What do you wish you had been less afraid of? What relationship do you wish you had been braver about? What version of yourself do you wish you had given yourself permission to become? Now open your eyes. That 90-year-old wisdom is not locked in the future. It is available to you right now, today. The only question is whether you will listen to it. Memento mori is not a reminder to be afraid of death. It is the ultimate permission slip to be fully, boldly, unapologetically alive. And here we are, at the end of our time together. And I want to take a moment before the final word to just acknowledge something. You stayed. You listened through all of it. The calm and the difficult. The empowering and the uncomfortable. The ancient wisdom and the modern application. And that says something real about you. It says you are someone who takes your growth seriously. Someone who is not content to stay exactly as you are. Someone who knows, somewhere in their bones, that there is more available and is willing to do the work to find it. So let me bring it all home. We started with the mind, that calm, settled, clear mind that is the actual foundation of everything you want to build. We talked about the dichotomy of control, the liberating, clarifying truth that some things are up to you and some are not, and that your power lives entirely in focusing on the former. We talked about negative visualization, how imagining loss deepens gratitude and builds the fearlessness you need to take real risks. We talked about a more fatty, loving what happens, trusting the difficult chapters, treating your full story as necessary and worthy. We talked about virtuous wealth, how wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance are not just philosophical virtues, but the actual operating system of lasting financial success. We talked about the present moment, the only place where anything real is ever built, the only moment in which you are actually alive. We talked about the morning ritual, the 10 minutes that put you in the driver's seat of your own day. And we talked about memento mori, the most clarifying truth of all, the one that burns away everything unnecessary and leaves only what genuinely matters. Here is what I want you to remember. Stoicism is not a destination. It is not a finish line you cross and then you are done. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of the world, and he still had to remind himself every single morning how to be patient, how to be focused, how to be kind. He still struggled. He still had days when the philosophy felt far away and the frustration felt very close. The difference was that he kept coming back. Day after day, year after year, decade after decade. He kept returning to the practice. And that returning, that daily, humble, honest recommitment is the whole secret. Not perfection, just return. You are not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be present. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're supposed to keep asking the right questions. The life you want, the calm, the success, the wealth, the depth, the sense of genuine purpose. It is not waiting for you in some distant future. It is available right now, in the quality of your attention, in the integrity of your choices, in the depth of your presence. That is what Epictetus discovered in chains. That is what Marcus Aurelius discovered on a throne. That is what Seneca discovered in his wealth. And that is what you can discover, starting tomorrow morning with 5 quiet minutes before your phone. So here's my ask. My real, honest, from the heart ask. Do not let this be just another audiobook you listened to and felt good about for a day. That would be a waste of everything these ideas are capable of doing for your life. Pick one practice. Just one. The morning ritual. The control audit. The amor fati journal. The memento mori reflection. 1. And commit to it for 30 days. Not because 30 days makes you a Stoic, but because 30 days of honest practice will show you something that no audiobook can tell you, that you already have inside you right now, everything you need to build the life you've been dreaming about. You always did. You just needed to get quiet enough to remember it. And if this audiobook gave you something real, a new idea, a moment of clarity, a feeling of calm you did not have an hour ago, then please do something with that. Share this with someone who is running hard and forgetting to breathe. Share it with someone who is chasing success and losing themselves in the chase. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not behind, not broken, not too late. Because these ideas belong to everyone. And the more people who have access to them, the better this world quietly becomes. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to Bite-Size Book English right now. Every single week, we bring you the world's most powerful ideas from the greatest books ever written in simple, clear, warm human English. Because knowledge should not be complicated. It should not be exclusive. It should sound like a conversation between two people who are both trying to figure out how to live well. Drop a comment below and tell me, Which practice from this audiobook are you going to start with tomorrow? I genuinely read every single comment, and your answer matters to me. Like this if it added something real to your day. And share it. Share it with just one person. Because your one share might be exactly what someone, somewhere, needed to hear today. Thank you, truly, for your time, your attention, your willingness to sit with these ideas. In a world full of noise, that is itself a Stoic act. And we will see you in the next one.